start recording the event, but we're also going to publish this live onto our Facebook platform as well, so to be able to get as big a reach as possible. If you have got questions that you'd like answering, can I invite you to write them in the chat? Any question that you want answering by myself or Kamlesh over this evening's conversation, simply write them in the chat. And at the moment we finish the conversation and move to a more interactive event, then I'm simply going to read through all of the chat and answer questions in the order in which they've been asked. So anytime at all over the duration of today's event, if you've got a question that you'd like answering, simply write it in the chat for me, and I'll answer it in the order in which it's been posed, as it were. So without further ado, I'm going to say sincerest of thanks to Kamlesh for joining us again this afternoon. Today's conversation is all around business planning, but with the startup, or either the startup in mind, or perhaps a business owner that hasn't either got a business plan or hasn't written one previously, in order to be able to have a far better understanding of perhaps what ought to be included and what doesn't need to be included, some of the things that we ought to give considerations to when writing a business plan. And like I say, what we will do is we'll make, like this is being recorded this evening, and we'll make the audio of the recording. I'm not going to share people's living rooms with people online, but we'll make the audio available as a download for all of you to be able to have access to. So after tonight's conversation, if you want to re-listen to it or reshare it or listen to any of the questions that have been asked or answered, then you're more than able to be able to do that. We want to be able to make this as accessible to as many people as possible. So without further ado, Kamlesh, sincerest of thanks for joining us again this evening and giving your time for this event. We're looking at business planning today through the eyes of either a pre-startup or a startup that perhaps has never written a business plan before. Perhaps you could talk through some of the things that somebody ought to give considerations to before putting pens to paper, as it were, and crafting their first plan. Can you give us an indication with regards to? Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go in a different direction. Like I say, this is completely unscripted. So I'm going to start off by saying, Kamlesh, there are many people that would argue that you don't need a business plan to start a business. What might you say to them?
Okay. First of all, good evening. If you are from UK, if you are from abroad, not sure what time, but very warm welcome to everyone with Jay and myself, Kamlesh Rajput. So yes, you don't need business plan. This is what the argument is. Or do you need the business plan? So if you want more accidents on the road, then you don't need business plan. If you have no vision, then you don't need business plan. There are lots of people who, I believe about 68% people who are entrepreneurs or have business, they don't have business plan. And this is where this argument has come from, that I am running my business for 5-10 years and I never had business plan. So what's the sin that I'm committing? The point is, if you have a business plan, then you will realize what you are missing. You only need business plan if you have ambition to grow, and if you don't want to create the job for yourself. So there are businesses, or there are certain people who just walk into the business. So if my father had a shop, and when my father retires, and if he gives me the shop, I take over the shop, I don't need business plan. But if I have a bigger plan that I want my shop to become a franchise chain of specialist shopkeepers, then yes, I will need a plan. A plan is required only when your vision is big enough and it allows you to grow.
Thank you very much. So, is it fair to say then that whilst we don't need a plan, there's no legalities around having to have a plan, and you shouldn't, it's not necessarily a case of, well, once you get to a certain size in business, then you could consider a business plan. Is it fair to suggest then that the difference between running a business with a plan and running a business without a plan predominantly comes down to whether you're going to have what I call lead indicators or lag indicators? And what I mean by that is whether you've got a plan where you've pre-considered as to what might happen and therefore planned towards it, as opposed to a lag indicator, looking back at and thinking, oh, do you know what? We didn't have that good a year last year, and looking at historic events to try and plan forward and determine as to what you're going to do in the future. So is it fair to say that the business plan is all about being able to say, do you know what? This is something that I need because it's going to be able to help me predict where I'm going and plan for it accordingly, as opposed to be caught on the hoof all the time. And perhaps many people were impacted by COVID and a sudden national or international lockdown to determine as to, well, I didn't see that coming. Is it fair to say that the plan is the map that gets us from A to B?
Correct. And I think one thing common in all of us who are entrepreneurs and running business, we don't have a boss. So there is no accountability. And in reality, if there is no accountability, there is nothing that, we are measured. Our performance is not measured against anything. It's not compared against anything. It's just like a class full of very sincere people and no teacher. Right? So my genuine definition of business plan is very different. That business plan is a process of, number one, examining and challenging the mindset of an entrepreneur to convert that into reliable and implementable roadmap. So let me just repeat it again. A business plan is a process of examining. So first of all, you examine what your plan is. The second thing, and challenging. And you challenge. Have you underestimated? Have you overestimated? Have you forgotten this? What about this? So examining and challenging the mind map of an entrepreneur, and then convert that mind map into two things: reliable and implementable roadmap, So this will answer the question of all those people who have done the business plan and never looked at it because it was not reliable, or probably it was not implementable. So this is what happens, that you only create a business plan and you only invest in business plan if it is going to allow you to rely on it and you can implement on it as well.
Thank you. So if we were going to then take the journey from perhaps the person that has never had a plan before, now understands the need to be able to have one, but perhaps doesn't even know where to start. Kamlesh, what's the first step in being able to move from understanding the need for one to being able to get towards this reliable document that we can now work with?
This is a wonderful question. So the first of all is the desire that you want to achieve more than what you can think about. Okay, so accepting the fact that you don't have a business plan and you want to write a business plan. And the first starting point everybody get stuck on, don't know where to start. Let me tell you, I was looking at the James Bond movie, Casino Royale, and if you look at the plot, it's only 20 or 30 sentences. In a similar way, when you start your business plan, you need a plot, you need your vision, and say, if this is what problem I'm trying to solve, and for whom I'm going to solve. And that's
I'm,
what
I'm
it.
going to I'm going to stop you there because I think that's really really key. And if people are making notes, that there's two things there. First of all, what problem am I trying to solve? And secondly, who am I trying to solve that for? Because those two things are paramount. That regardless of what we put into a business plan, and regardless of whether we're thinking about it from the terms of sales or marketing or how we construct a team or the structure of a business, we need to in every document, in every essence of a business plan, we need to we need to collate and make sure it's congruent to those two statements. What problem am I trying to solve? And who am I solving it for? Sorry, Kamlesh, I interrupted, but I think that's really
So,
key.
right. So the first step is write down the plot. Call it a plot, right? So you write this thing down, that what is your idea, what problems you are trying to solve. And at this stage, accept one universal truth: everybody is not your customer. If you embed into this, it will bring the clarity, much valued clarity, for you to develop the plot further. Who is your customer and how you get to communicate and engage with your future customer. So this is the first point. Write down. Now, I would not suggest to use any template at this stage. At this stage, um, I write myself quite a lot, so I call it thinking pad. So I simply take my notebook, or on my computer, just a blank page called thinking pad. And whatever I'm thinking, I'm just writing the thought, regardless of which order it is or what section it is. I'm just writing until I'm finished, as if I'm trying to tell my story to someone that I want to start the business. Imagine you are sitting in front of someone in a pub or in your social environment, or your good friend, and you are having a conversation. Write it down on a thinking pad. Once you write down on a thinking pad, that is the first part. And I think those who start with the template, they often go wrong, because it's very frightening sight that if you go on Google and if you type template for the business plan, you will come up. Yesterday I was looking at one website, they had 36 startup template for the website. And I think that's very frightening. Anyone who has just decided to start the journey of being an entrepreneur, it's a frightening news that I need. Which one do I choose? And instead of thinking about your idea, you get lost into other things, which is not your strongest part in terms of running and managing business. So that's the first part. You write it down. Then the second part, you then have to decide, are you trying to sell product or services? If it is product or services, it is different. The next thing you need to answer yourself: is your product competing with other competitors, or do you have a groundbreaking or thought-provoking or a very disruptive business idea? Because then the journey is different. Then if you have a new innovative product or services, I would suggest that you engage with a specialist business plan writer at an early stage. But at this stage, you don't need any professional to write your business plan. All you do is then think about what you are trying to sell. Then the next one, and I think the most crucial part, is your vision. And I think unless and until any entrepreneur brings clarity that what is my vision, it's I have read the biography of, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and one of the things which is clear, at a very, very early stage of the business, before even they opened the bank account, they had a vision. We in United Kingdom, I have seen many businesses, the first thing they do, they run to the bank, or they go on the company's house website, or they talk to the web designer or the printer without giving any thought. And I think this is what we need to find out, that as an entrepreneur, first look at what is your vision. If this is your vision, and if the product or service, you can have a simple product of selling stapler, for example. So do you want to sell this product only in your town, in your street, or do you want to go bigger and bigger? So this is quite important to write vision. And then once you write all these things down, then I think you can go next step. One thing I would like to share with everybody, that all the section of business plan that you need to write, you will never ever be able to write complete and perfect in the first attempt, because every section of business plan will be half finished. This is not a kind of a production assembly line that you finish part one, then you finish part two, you finish part three, and finish part four. And I think this is what is a reality, that all the sections, so the first section is your executive summary. I call it section 0. So the executive summary will tell you about your entire business and your entire business plan in 2 to 3 pages. And it will talk about how many sections you have, what this section is going to tell you, what this section is going to tell you, what this section will assist you, and this is what it is. And at the end of that, if you are seeking funding, when you write your vision and when you try to write your executive summary, you will realize one thing: do you need funding? Because bigger your vision, then bigger the capital need is there. But also, when you need, the size of the capital will decide what type of business plan journey you will need. I remember every business plan, I got 100% record in writing successful business plan. And at every business plan, one thing is so consistent, that at the start of the business plan, when an entrepreneur says, I need 40,000, by the time we finish business plan is 300,000. The business plan, one of the biggest client I had, he started business plan saying, I need 180,000. In the end, he needed 28 million pound, but 2 million to start. So this is the thing, when you address the vision, it is going to allow you to decide how much funding you will need. Is it small? Is it something you have? It is possible that if you are trying to buy an existing business who says, I'll sell you for 100,000, then you know you need 100,000. If you have 100,000, then you don't need funding. But if you have planned to take over the existing business for 100,000 and add value to convert it into £500,000 business, you will need some money at the start. So this is the first thing. Another thing, and it is only unique for the startup businesses, it is majority of the business plan, of the startup business plan, they forget the startup cost. In order to open the door of your business office or your shop, what do you need to do before the first customer walks in? Everything you need to do. That is your startup cost. And I think that is the one part. But the other part is that many people mistreat the startup cost as well. And I think I would suggest that, take an advice. So the first section we talked about is that we need an executive summary. The second part of any business plan is about the business itself. what it is. Is it a limited company, partnership, charity, whatever it is? Then what type of, how many people are involved? What is the history? All those things about the company itself, what the company is going to do, where the company is going to address. So the business itself, what will be the organogram of the business? What will be roles and responsibility? What will be your role and responsibility? Yeah. And at this stage, I would suggest one thing, that the last section of your business plan should be appendices. So, for example, if you want to say there is one person in your business plan called marketing director, you can write that this marketing director will do this, but create a CV or a biography of an ideal marketing director and put it into appendix and call it appendix 1. Have lots of you will need lots of appendices as well in your business plan. So that is the last section. If you are so the second section is about the business itself. The third section is actually the product and services, what it is, how you have developed, how it is unique, who is going to buy, what problem it solves. Do you need to do further development? Do you need to add anything? Sometimes, I get business plan where people have developed the idea, but they can only do the prototype. I think one of them has joined us as well. So the product is developed up to a certain point, but they cannot mass produce because it needs funding to develop that. This is the section that you need to write the full potential of the product, what is happening. Okay. And the fourth section, and is one of the most ignored section of a business plan, is market research. It is also misunderstood as a marketing. It is not marketing. It is market research. Market research, and all your detailed research, I would suggest you put it into appendix that we have towards the end, the last section. But in market research section, you write about what is the size of the market. What is the size of the market in your particular geographical area? And your business plan, what is your penetration rate that you are trying to achieve? So if you are trying to sell something, and if you want your turnover to be £1 million, but the market is 10 billion, it says what percentage of the penetration your business wants to achieve. And it gives a bit of perspective. So in market research, you also do who are your competitors. You also bring in other things. What are the barriers to the entry? So if you develop something, how soon somebody can copy and compete with you? Or how, what else is there which is similar to your product but can compete? All this market research. And this section is going to help you further in pricing strategy. Because if you are trying to sell the same product, so let's take a milk. If you are trying to sell long life milk, you cannot have the same pricing as the other milk. It has to be different. So the fourth section was that market research. And here you have to find out that how you can explain your product is going to be placed in the market. After that, the next section is marketing, but I call it marketing and communication, because marketing is all about communication. And I think I have seen many entrepreneurs getting mixed up. So that in my simple way of understanding, there are two methods. One is traditional method, and one is the modern method. Traditional method is the print media. You uh, prepare the leaflet, drop the leaflet, business card, advertise in the local newspaper, door-to-door selling, telephone, cold calling. These are traditional methods. Excuse me. So the second option is the digital marketing. And digital marketing also, you need to explain here that how you are going to communicate with the potential future client. How will you engage and how will you communicate? So, how much money it will be to do your website or your social media like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, how much money you need to spend on email marketing. And this is the first section where you will get a feel for how much money you need. This is the only section where the money comes in. So can you remember, most of the people get scared about business plan because they don't know about money and finance. We haven't talked about pound or pennies yet. And this is the fifth section that's where we need to understand how much commitment we need to make in order to sell our product and how many we need to sell. And the last section, I would call it, is called finance. So section number 6. I do very simple business plan unless there is a need. For the startup, these are the 6 sections. So number 6 is finance. In the finance, you have to explain if you are buying an existing business, then you need to write financial history. That in what was the performance of this business in the past. But if you are starting from scratch, here you need to explain. So my suggestion is that you make 5 years forecast, not 3. Many people, they do it 3 because it's easy. And when you are putting your lifetime saving, your children's inheritance at risk, you have to see longer, that how safe your money is, how long will it take to get your money back. Because I can tell you, I have seen only few business plan. There is a technical term called payback. Payback means if I put 10,000 pounds in the business today, when will I get it back? Very few businesses have a 3 years payback time. This is the reason I would suggest that do your forecast for 5 years. It is possible that you will not know how to do that, but fine. Now, to do the financial forecast, you may use the template, but there is a misunderstanding. People think cash flow forecast is the same as financial. It is not. Cash flow forecast. So the difference between cash flow forecast is that cash flow is based on the time. So say, for example, if you start your business today, 1st of April, and you will raise invoice on the 10th of April, and you are going to give 30 days credit to your customer. So the financial forecast will say your income, and suppose that invoice is 5,000 pounds. So financial forecast will say that in month 1, your income is 5,000 pounds. But the cash flow will say you got no money in month 1.
0.
But 5,000 in month 2. So please, it's a sincere request. Do not mix up with cash flow forecast and financial forecast. So what does the financial forecast do? So if you do not want to use any template, I would simply suggest that have a table of 12 columns, month 1, month 2, month 3, and 13 is the total of all that. And write down in the first section all your income. Either if you have 2 or 3 products, then write down all 2 or 3 products. And here, your biggest challenge is your pricing model. This is one of the most ignored section. I believe that even a carpenter can use the pricing strategy. The smallest businesses also, they are never informed about this. They are never advised about this, that there are various pricing strategies. The only strategy most of the startup businesses do is beat the competitor at a price level. And that is one of the wrong direction to take. Yeah. If I'm selling crystal and if you are selling diamond, check your price, what we are selling. My crystal may look like as diamond, but they are not diamond. They are simply glass. And if you are selling diamond, don't compete with me. And I think this is the point. So there are various strategies. And I can give you a simple example. If you believe that you can sell your product only for £10 per unit, and you can't sell it more than that. Okay, so there are businesses where you are not in control of the price because your product and service is so widely available that you don't have much control. Then you look, we call it margin strategy. So if you can't sell more than 10, then you decide, I want to make £4 out of this. Then you look backward. What do I need to do that my cost is not more than £6? So this is called margin strategy. Another strategy is called markup strategy. So markup strategy says, I know what is my cost. So if I can manufacture something, or if I know if I work for 35 hours a week, and out of 35 hours, I have 25 productive hours. So what should be my salary? So if I want to work out what is the salary of a qualified chartered accountant today, and if it says 60,000, for example, then I need to work out £60,000, work backward per week, divide that by only 25 hours because only 25 are chargeable, and arrive, this is the rate. So this is the way you can calculate. But coming back to the example, where you can influence and control the price, there is a strategy called markup. So you know that you can produce these goods or services for £6, and then you say, I'm going to charge £12 because in this market, I'm one of the few provider. Or in this season, demand is the highest. So if you want in this season, the product is at that price. This is what airlines do. During children's school holidays, the air fuel doesn't go up, but the air ticket price goes. So this is a perfect example. So there are various pricing strategies, and this is the first time every entrepreneur will be challenged. And this is where the business plan definition is: examining and challenging the mind map. So in finance section, you will be looking at what prices you charge. Then you are going to write all your costs down and see month by month what is the profit left. And then you need to find out, first of all, what is your break even? So how many product or services I need to sell to be break even, which I need to make sure that I sell minimum but still nobody's going to pay my mortgage. So I need to know. Many people ask me as an accountant, how much do you think I should charge? I had one PR consultant, highly successful. He is writing for the Broad Street newspaper, and he was made redundant 2 years ago. And he did not know what to charge. So he asked his few friends and he started charging £35 an hour. And uh, he within 3 months, he came back and said, Kamlesh, I can't survive. I don't have money and I've created debt. So I asked him, why did you charge £35? He says, that's what everybody says I should charge. The cardinal sin. You don't do what non-expert says. The experts will never tell you in the pub their expert advice. They will make you pay for it. That's why they are expert. So this is what I would recommend, that you find out how much money you need to support your daily lifestyle that you must earn. And this is how it is. And I have got one secret message for everybody. I call it M90. So that is, when you start your business, make sure for 3 months, for 90 days, money for 90 days. That's what M90 comes from. Money for 90 days. Assume, and I'm going to reveal that majority of the businesses will not make profit in the first 3 months. They will not be able to take their salary even. So make sure before you start your business, you have enough reserve to pay for your lifestyle and your mortgage so that you don't have to panic. But believe me, if you do the right thing, you will not have a dry 90 days. Money will start coming, provided you do the right thing. So this is what happens in finance section. And you will keep going round and round in the finance section until you come across to the right balance, that you do understand how your business plan is going to be. And I think if you come to this level, you will realize you are exhausted and you can't go any further. Good news. I think you have got lots of raw material. You have found the site where the diamonds are. They are just not broken and they are not polished yet. So as a startup business owner, these are the things that you need to do in order to make a start. Don't be afraid. By the time you go to section 6, which is the finance section, I would suggest that you seek some advice if you are struggling at that point. But guess what? You have done a lot of work and you won't pay for the business plan because you have done so much work. A good business plan writer will identify your ability to write business plan. And ethically, he will say, I can see you can write this, go and do this, this, this. I can understand that section number 6, financially you don't know, fine, I will help and I'll write it. But writing the financial section will be like a roundabout. It will be an exercise which will be done again and again until we find the right balance. Because here you will realize how much money we are short of, how much more marketing we have committed to do that. But if you do only this much marketing, then our income will not be this. So we need to put more money in the marketing, and this will continue to happen. And this is, I call it, blind spot. So in every business plan, a good business plan writer or advisor will identify the blind spot that you have. And I like to share that at this point, I have seen many business plans taking a completely new direction. As a business plan writer, when we start questioning the finances, the client realizes that his product has a wider scope. His product has more features which he or she has not taken into consideration. He could add that or he can develop that. And this is where the fun happens. So At the end of the finance section, the last section of the finance part is the funding requirement. So whatever funds you need, it will be the end of section 6. One thing I would also suggest that in appendices, I would encourage, and to an extent, I demand from every entrepreneur, I'm going to write business plan for, I want your CV or your biography. Your biography is quite important because the person who is going to read your business plan wants to know who you are, what has been your journey, what are your competencies, what are your experience in which sector, in which market. And this is how the business plan should be written. I think we have got lots of questions I can see.
Kamlesh, that's been a really, really great insight. I just want to quickly, in a sentence or two, just be able to try and encapsulate everything that you've talked about there, and then we'll open people's mics up and invite people to ask questions. If people have got questions, please feel free to either jot them into the chat, or if you know how to use the reactions button and raise your hand, we'll come to those as we can. But just in summary, what I've got from that predominantly, particularly for the business startup, is it will be far more advantageous to be able to have a number of sheets of paper, and not a book, and perhaps not even a laptop or a computer or tablet as such, but a number of sheets of paper with a heading on each sheet of paper. And as you come up with an idea, you determine which of those headings is that most applicable to, and you write your idea down, and then until you've emptied your head, a brainstorm, as you were, with regards to being able to just take everything out from here and catalogue on it on pieces of paper. And then as the plan starts to evolve and move forward, we can start looking at those scraps of bits of paper and those odd ideas, and we can start formulating sentences and considerations for each of those. And then subsequently from that, we can almost say, well, which of those ideas and considerations that we've worked through are now worthy of putting onto our final plan, to which we're then going to take forward and operate within. So we're going to have this idea of just emptying our heads onto a series of papers, but with headlines of each, and determining as to whereabouts does this best fit, and then finally take all of that information and to correlate it and to put it into order. If there's one other thing I wanted to quickly share with people before we open the mics to questions, it would be the first section on any template that you download, and there's hundreds to find. I mean, we provide a template to anyone that wants one. I can send people the link if you'd like to be able to have access to the business template that we've been using for the last 7 years or so. But the first section always says executive summary, and certainly in my experience, in the 7 or 8 businesses that I've either been responsible for growing or buying or acquiring or setting up myself, it's the last section that you write. It's the last section that you finish off once you've gathered all of the other information. And the executive summary is almost a summary of everything else that is to follow. And yet so many people get caught up on thinking that they've got to have this really nice polished presentations to start off with, and not really realizing that in actual fact it should be the last thing that you write in full, in finished version, because it's actually a correlation of all of the other thoughts and ideas and considerations that you've gone through in filling out the other sections. That's then a summary. It's almost like the aperitif before a good main course that just whets the appetite of the reader, that says, I'm so much looking forward to turning to page 7 and reading all about X, or turning to page 11 or the appendices to learn all about the CV. Is that fair? Fab. Well, in which case, I'm just going to quickly we're no longer going to stream on Facebook because I think if people have got individual questions that they would like to ask, I don't think that that's relevant to be able to be asking that to all and sundry. So I've now stopped sharing on Facebook. If people have got particular questions, if you'd like to either use the reactions button at the bottom and just raise your hand, or if you'd like to type it into the chat. I have market research in section 4, market communications in section 5. Yes, that's correct. Anne Spencer. Market research is always done first, and that's about looking at where you sit in the industry. It's about understanding a little bit about SWOT analysis of your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats against either a local, a regional, national or an international competitor. And why I use those 4 headings, local, regional, national and international, is we have to understand that 30 years ago this year, Bernard Lee donated to the world access to the World Wide Web. And in doing so, it determined that we are all now competing on a digital playing field. Just because you live in Surrey doesn't necessarily mean that you're only competing with other local businesses in Surrey. It could very well be that there's a company in Bangladesh that has a relationship with a partnership with a company around the corners to you, and they're far better at marketing and advertising into the local industry to compete with you as a local business owner. And therefore, when we talk about doing SWOT analysis, and I'll briefly touch on that for a second, but when we talk about doing analysis and market research, looking at us against our potential competition, you can't simply say, well, it's within a 5-mile geographical radius of where I am in business. We need to understand that there are people all over the world that are more than happy to be able to market to your audience and to try and take some market share. So to be able to understand what the market looks like and where we fit in it, or where we would like to fit in it, is critical, as opposed to simply saying, well, I'm going to be a shop for local people, because ironically, local people on a World Wide Web is a global audience. Now, I want to very briefly touch on this word SWOT and turn it on its head a little bit. We've probably all come across the example of SWOT, this strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, understanding as to where do we fit and how do we move forward. However, psychologically, SWOT doesn't do a lot for the business owner. If you think about it logically, if you're going to list all of your strengths and then immediately turns to your weaknesses, it leaves you on a bit of a damper. It leaves you on a bit of a downside. Why on earth would you be optimistic about the future if you've listed all of your strengths and then subsequently listed all of your weaknesses to try and counterbalance them? Likewise, if you use all of the opportunities out there and then list all the threats, the chances are that you're going to be far less optimistic about being able to drive you and your business forward than you would do if you turned it on its head. And I want you to use exactly the same acronym, but turn it upside down as a TOES assessment. What are the threats that are out there? And therefore, what are the opportunities that are available to you as a result of being able to find a niche in all of those otherwise threats? What are your weaknesses? And how do we turn them into strengths? And if you do exactly the same analysis, but you do it in the opposite direction and you do TOES instead of SWOTs, it leaves you feeling far more confident and optimistic and motivated to try and take the business forward than it would do if you do a traditional TOES model and follow everybody else's example. There's a question here from Richard. Richard, you seem to have written it to me privately as opposed to publicly. I hope you don't mind, but I am going to read it out so everyone's aware of what you've asked, so in order that we can answer that and let everyone understand the benefit of it. When I was first set up 5 years ago, my bank account was overdrawn. I borrowed 100 quid and the car for my dad's to start up. I know the £100 needs to go in the plan and any financials, but does the car? So Kamlesh, he says, I borrowed £100 and the car from my dad as to start up. I know the £100 needs, £100 needs to go in the plan, and any financials, but does the car that's been borrowed needs to go in the business plan?
Yes, yes. So the business, uh, I would suggest that you find out the value of the car. Let's say the value of the car is £8,000. So that £8,000 goes in the business plan as your personal investment. So it then becomes the asset. And then business owes you £8,000 already. So that is that. Now, Jay, we had a couple of questions from one of the attendees here. And I think the question was, what is the difference between the business plan where I need the funding and the business plan for myself? Is that right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So the answer to that is when you prepare the business plan. So there'll be differences. The business plan for yourself will always be limited, because if you have got all the funding, if you are starting a business and if you don't need to borrow the money, then it will be very simple business plan. But if your idea is very market disruptive, very thought provoking, and very innovative, in order to crystallize your product to be ready to launch in the market, you will need lots of money. So what happens when you are borrowing the money? When you are borrowing the money, your business plan needs to be a bit more authentic, bit more convincing. Every line of your business plan needs to be justified. For example, if you say that your sales in month 5 will be 5,000 and in month 9 will be 10,000, you need to explain what are you going to do that your turnover will go from 5,000 from month 5 to month 8 to 10,000. Are you going to do more marketing? Does it also mean that, or are you going to get new employees in order to complete the project early? What it is. This is one example. So when you borrow the money, your accountability is even very, very wide. Every line of your expenses, every line of your income, every money you spend on the marketing or anything will be questioned. And you have to have a credible and reliable and implementable answers, because somebody else is putting the money on the table. And you as a business owner has a chance to walk away.
Yes, absolutely. It was interesting because I recall about 2 years ago now, um, a an ex-colleague from 3 or 4 businesses ago. We caught up, and he was telling me about how a terrible event had taken place. He'd gone to be able to start his business up. He'd put together a very concise and very compelling business plan. And over a period of 7 or 8 months, had been able to raise £1.6 million of investment into his business. I said, well, that's great news. What's the problem? He said, well, I've been ripped off by the investor. And I said, well, that's a little odd. Can you explain what do you mean by that? And he said, well, they put £1.6 million into the business. I told them how much I needed. They'd gone through they'd done the due diligence, they'd done the heads of terms, everything was working well, everyone was happy. He said, and as soon as they put the money in, I took back out the 255,000 that I'd already privately invested to get it to where it was. And I went, right. He said, but the investor said that because I hadn't declared that on my business plan, that it was theft from his money and therefore he wanted all his cash back. And the simple fact is that unless we declare the current financial circumstance of the business and what we're going to use the £1.6 million of somebody else's money for, then, whatever you've done to that times to get it to where it is now is on your own luck and on your own watch. unless you've made a declaration of what you've invested in it so far, what your director's loan is, when you want that to be repaid, how you expect that to be repaid. And we need to give consideration that if anyone's going to put money into your business and invest in you and your good idea, we're also measuring, if I'm going to put £1.6 million into your business, then the chances are that if I've got £1.6 million to spend and invest in a business, then before I put it into your business, it was probably already working for me somewhere else. Be that in an ISA account, be that stocks and shares, be that invested in a building. I'd already got some cash and it was making money for me. And the only reason why I've taken it from where it was making money and put it into you is because I believe in you and your product and service, and the chances are it's going to make me back some more money. And therefore, why would I ever take my 1.6 million out of bricks and mortar, somewhere that it's really, really safe and a good bet, but a long-term return, and put it into your business for a better return, a better promise, if in actual fact I've now put it at risk for the next 2, 3, 4 years whilst you try and return that money to me? We've got to be able to help people understand in a business plan and to get them as excited as we are and a believer in who we are and what we're about, if they're going to invest in us as opposed to as some form of charitable donation. Susan's asked a question. Can you just kindly refine and remind us as to what you meant by the blind spots, please, Kamlesh?
Okay, so thank you, Susan, for asking a very, very relevant question. If you all have watched The Dragon's Den, this is what happens in Dragon's Den. When somebody comes and does the pitch, most of the things they ask, they are the blind spot. Do they know the numbers? For example, sometimes they will say, well, you are saying that, your product will be bought by Ocado or Marks and Spencer, about 300,000 units. Where is the order? And it's not an order. It's an intent, letter of intent. It's not an order. It's not confirmed. Many times you have a product and you have not thought about taking a patent or a trademark. That is a threat. If you talk to someone, sometimes people discuss their business idea with friends and other people, and they want free advice. But there's a danger. As a professional, I tell all my clients when they take the advice, they must get the non-disclosure agreement signed by the person they are taking advice from. It is quite important to do that. Sometimes the blind spots are something which government is going to change. So say, for example, this year, every landlord, or majority of the landlord, they had a massive surprise because this year you can't claim mortgage on your property if you are a landlord and if you are renting property. But the law was done in 2017. Everybody today is affected by IR 35, but the law was there in 2017. It was always there. So today, next year, I can tell you that NTD is coming, making tax digital. Every business needs to have their records digital. Another example is that those who are in construction industry, they had a surprise called VAT reverse charge rule. And that was 1st of March. So these are the blind spots. Sometimes if you don't ask the expert, because this is not your area of expertise, so it is fair to yourself, and you should accept that your business plan needs to be seen by someone. For example, sometimes people come to me and say, I'm going to hire someone and I'm going to have him as a that person will be self-employed, so I don't have to pay the national insurance and the tax. I said, no, you can't do that. So these are the blind spots. Susan, I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you, Kamlesh. And so we've got one more question. There's one thing that I want to pick up on with regards to what you've said on advice and NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. I was taught a long, long time ago, probably just after I left school, the most expensive advice that you will ever get is usually that given for free. On the basis that if you've been able to get it for free, it's probably not worth a lot to you. And if you follow it, it's likely to cost you a lot of money in the long term compared to having spent a few quid on getting the right professional advice in the first half. I'm going to offer we've got two final questions, and then we'll look to wrap up. But Trevor has asked, does a business plan really have to be quite a long and detailed document, or is it best to stay straight to the point? You know, I'm very conscious of the fact that there are some people out there that talk about business plan on a page. So is there the necessity to have a book, Kamlesh, or can we modify that and get away with a few sentences per section?
Okay, the first of all, business plan is a process. It's not a booklet, it's not a document. It is a process of the mind map that you have. It needs to be examined and challenged. So if you have a very small plan to work 1 day per week and every day 3 hours per week, your business plan can be very small. It doesn't need to, but if someone has a business plan which is expecting to have the reach of 1 million customer or 100,000 customer, they will need different. So it is unfair to put this measurement that how long should be the business plan. Many people say that business plan can be 1 page, but I don't. I'm a very realistic and I'm very down to earth person, and I say 1 page is your vision. It can't be your whole business plan. Understand you can explain everything in 1 page, just like right at the beginning I mentioned the plot for the movie. Yeah, you can write in 10 sentences what the movie is going to be all about. But again, if you want to know that in order to achieve your vision, everything needs to be examined and challenged. And when these two things happen, that will decide how big your business plan is. I had many clients who I had one software engineer who came to me and he developed a software, and we found somebody in Silicon Valley wanted to talk to him. So he went with the software. Now, in his software, he spent about 14 months to develop the software. And there was something in his business, in his software, which was more valuable to investor, because the investor could see that his investment in other businesses, this is the most valuable thing. They have not been able to develop, and they have not been able to find it. And this man has it. So they said, we don't need your whole product. We need only this portion of your product. But we'll give you the money that you need. And he came back from Silicon Valley and he was so upset because he was a creator, and every creative person, he says the feature, so in his eyes, the feature which the investor wanted was so easy and it didn't cost him anything. But his 14, 17 months was spent on developing other bit, and the investor did not want it. But I think in the end, he saw the sense. In fact, he sold 10 times more than what he could have got for the whole product. Now, that means when he started the business plan, his business plan was different. So the simple answer to your question is, depends how big your vision is. If your vision is big, your business plan will have a different shape and size.
Thank you very much. Kamlesh, we've got one final question, and then I've got a quick poll that I'll invite people to take part in, please. And like I say, we have got some free giveaways that I want to be able to share with people. So don't sign off just yet, because there's a couple of bits I want to be able to share and to give some opportunity for people. But the final question for this evening, and I think it probably most apt that this is the final question, because it actually leads to the next discussion that we'll be having in a fortnight's time. It's Richard that's asked, and he said, would you say that a business plan ought to be written differently for different audiences? And I think that's such an apt question because it's going to both be worthy of answering now, but then talk about how we're going to take this discussion forward in a fortnight's time.
Yeah, I think there is one word which can give the answer. That's called stakeholder. So say, for example, if a business plan needs a loan of 10, 20,000 pounds, then you are writing business plan for your bank. Now, bank manager are different type of individual. If your business plan needs 150,000 pounds, for example, bank may not lend you, you may need to remortgage the house, but you can also go to business angel. So business angel is an individual who has money, who is prepared to lend you, where the bank is not prepared to lend you. And in return, the person is going to take a part of a share of your business. That's what happens in Dragon's Den. They take the share in the business. So if you are writing business plan for someone who is going to take equity, a small equity, the language needs to be different, because we also need to assure the person that A, his investment will be safe. Number two, with his investment, the way we are going to spend the money, not just start taking bigger salary, but we are going to invest into the either machinery or the raw material or the marketing or right resources in order to scale the business or grow the business. The third thing, we also need to convince this business angel that what will be his payback period, how soon he will get back his money. And so this is the one part. If you need larger fund, let's say venture capital fund, I would suggest, I have seen in my experience, and I like to be very blunt here. If your business plan needs less than 2 million pounds, don't bother. The venture capitalist will not even read it, because the venture capital, the larger the funding required. So let's say your business plan needs 5 million pounds. If that is the case, the language, the flavors, the type of research, and the type of language needs to be tailored so that the venture capitalist has a different motto. He has a different reason why he's investing. So we need to understand the intention of the stakeholder. Or if your mom is lending you the money, you can write business plan the way you want, because mom is going to give you the money. I hope, Richard, that answers the question.
Thank you very much. Like I say, there is a quick poll that I'd like to be able to ask. So first of all, we're just going to put that onto your screen now and simply ask, do you currently have a business plan? You can either answer no, or yes, it's in my head. Yes, it's written, but it's out of date. Or yes, you've got one and it is in date. So we'll just leave that on the screen for a few moments or two if you're willing to be able to contribute and give us an idea with regards to whereabouts are you on your business plan journey right now, as to whether no, you haven't got one, you haven't given it consideration yet, and that's perhaps why you've come and joined us this evening. Yes, I've got a business plan, but it's still all in my head at the moment. I'm still yet to be able to document anything and put it on paper. Perhaps you have put something on paper before, but it's perhaps significantly out of date and haven't given considerations to it for some time yet. Or yes, it's up to date. I'm comfortable with it, and this was more of a learning exercise, if nothing else. Sincerest of thanks for you for having completed that one. The only other question that I'd like to ask, if I may, please, just to give you an idea, I'll share the results there. That 21% said no, 5% said it's in your head, 47% said it is written but out of date, and 26% have said yes, that they've got one and it's up to date. Harleen, I've noticed that you've asked a question. I'll be with you in a second or two, my friend. So the only other question I'd like to ask of this evening, please, is a quick poll just to determine as to how have we done today. So on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being excellent and 1 being terrible, how do we do in informing, educating and answering people's questions so far today, please? as to whether you feel that you've got everything that you're looking for from us today. Like I say, this is part of a series that we're going to run over the next few weeks or so. So just to establish as to whether we're delivering what it is that you're looking for, or whether there's other things that we could perhaps give due considerations to, in order to be able to ensure that you get everything that you need. I'll leave that for just 2 or 3 more seconds or so. There's 2 more people left to be able to contribute, but sincerest of thanks for being able to offer that. Thank you. That's everyone. Sincerest of thanks for that.
I like to share, Jay, that for those businesses who already have a businesses, there is another business plan for those who are not a startup businesses, and I think you will advise them in due course. Correct?
Yes, absolutely. I've noticed we've got a hand up. So we've got a couple more minutes. So Harleen, if you'd like to take yourself off mute and ask Kamlesh your question, please.
Okay, I have a business. I've been writing business plans for when I was in the corporate sector, so I'm familiar with most of these things that we're talking about. The one thing is the financial forecast and setting a price point for the product. That's something that my daughter and I, who's part of the business, she's done a lot of the marketing side of it. She's done a lot of the market research as well. We've both done it. But when it comes down to the financial forecast, is something that I think we might struggle with, because when I used to write them in the corporate sector, they always had a template for it. And so you just take their numbers and you just plug it in and off you go. So that's where I think it is. Now, and this is just a comment. When you talk about the appendices, this is another way of thinking about it. I was already going to say, I need to write the job description. I need to write of the people that we want to have in there. I didn't think that we needed a CV of each person. So that will be new for us to do. So we've done all the other pieces. I'm familiar with SWOT analysis, but it was just interesting how you said to turn it on its side and turn it to say toes instead.
Yes.
So we will look at the threats and the opportunities.
Yeah. Strength, okay. Weaknesses, opportunities, and threat.
What turn it around to?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So my background, my first degree is in adult psychology. So if you look at it from a psychological point of view, as opposed to from a business perspective point of view, if you start with something positive and then move to a negative, if you then move to a positive and move to a negative, psychologically, you become less motivated and less confident to be with the outcome. Whereas if you just turn the whole thing on its head and start with the negatives and then find positives to counterbalance them, it leaves you far more confident and motivated to be able to implement some of the things on the sheet. And we've done this test for probably over, it was De Montfort University in 2016-17 that did this test with business planning for 866 people over a 12-month period. And they found that if you used SWOT, as opposed to if you used toes, exactly the same thing, but turned it upside down, there was a 13% difference in the outcome of implementing the plan in favour of people that were more optimistic and more confident using a toes assessment as opposed to a SWOT assessment.
Okay, well, it's basically the same thing and I put a SWOT analysis in mine anyway.
Sure.
So it's just a matter of just turning it around instead of putting it in the box.
Right. Let me share this thing, regarding financial. So financials will have 3 sections. One is profit and loss. Second one is the balance sheet. And the third one is the cash flow. And the way you do finance is and all these detail are in the appendices. So in the finance section, you write 5 years summary, just like a table. But in detail, you prepare for month by month for every 5 years, the profit and loss account and cash flow and balance sheet. Yeah, so this is how you do finance. This is how you start the finance section. And then you will also need to throw in the finance section and I think this is relevant to the previous question as well, some financial indicators depending upon if you are borrowing or not borrowing. So let's say if you are borrowing from the bank, then the bank wants to know the interest cover days. So say, for example, is your business generating enough profit to pay for the interest? And if your interest is £5,000 per year, and if you are making £20,000 profit, then the ratio is 1:4. So your business is generating 4 times the interest cost. So bank will feel comfortable. If you are borrowing the money from friends or families or business angel, they want to know the payback time. So you need to calculate some other thing. If you are borrowing from venture capitalists, you need to do some very complex ratios. Not only do that, you need to write about it. And this is certainly where you will need expert. I hope this clarifies.
Kamlesh, thank you so much for your time this evening. I did say I wanted to be able to offer people a gift to say thank you very much for joining us. Like I say, we have recorded this session, and I'll be uploading the audio only, not the visuals, but the audio only, onto something called SoundCloud. And from everyone that's registered on the event, and therefore we've got your email address, I will email you a copy of the audio so you can make reference to it and listen to it again if you would like to do so. However, I'm just going to quickly share the screen for 1 second or two and just bring you to the attention of one of our websites. We've got 5 or 6 different websites within the business. This one is specifically for current clients of My True North, my coaching business. But there is a free section that I'd like you to be able to be aware of. So you'll see here in the top column there, it says mytruenorth.club. I'll put again access to that in the chat box so people can find it easily. But if you were to visit the My True North club page, you'll notice over the right here it says login for access. If you were to click on there, it asks for your login details, member login. If you haven't already joined us, then this is how to do it. It's to click on and register for a new account. If you're already an existing member, then you could go in here and just put your login details. If I just go in here and do... sorry, if I go in there and logins to... I'll log into that one. Yes, I'm human. I was hoping to be able to show the inside, but it's not going to show me. Oh, there we go. So dashboard, club, visit site. You won't get access to Pathfinder Explorer as these are part of our paid membership, but you will get access to our QM store, which is where we offer free access to a whole host of resources within the QM store. And one of those you'll find is our business planning tool. We've got a where to start in business, and we've got a workbook there. But a business plan template, guidance on how to complete it, and a business plan template. And we give those away for free for anyone that would like to be able to join the website there. So like I say, if for people who haven't perhaps got a website, haven't perhaps got a business plan in place and don't know where to start, it's still in their head or a blank sheet of paper, and would like a template at least to be able to start mapping things on, then if you'd like to be able to visit that website, I'll just put the website in the chat function there, www.mytruenorth.club. And you could visit there, you could log in, set yourself up as a new member, and not only do you get a terms and conditions for B2B business, terms and conditions for B2C business, our business plan, our first booklet, helping you to be able to work out some of those personal numbers that we were talking about earlier, and the business plan template are all free of charge and a gift to anyone that wishes to be able to register on the site. I'm going to quickly stop recording now for this evening's session.